we in a quorum call?
We are.
I'd ask unanimous consent to rescind the quorum call. Mr. President, this week is National Police Week. During this week, we rightfully honor the brave men and women who put their lives on the line every single day to keep our families safe. And for me, supporting law enforcement it is personal. My husband is a retired law enforcement officer. I've worked for years as a prosecutor, side by side with law enforcement in the state of Nevada, and quite honestly here in Washington, D.C. I've seen firsthand the sacrifices our officers and their families make to keep our communities across the country safe. I also know how thinly stretched our police departments are across the country. Police departments are understaffed, and our officers are quite often overworked. Compounding the staffing shortages, it is becoming more and more difficult for our police departments to recruit and retain qualified officers. Once those officers are recruited, police departments often struggle to find the resources to train them. And when they suffer traumatic experiences in the line of duty, which also happens quite often, officers routinely don't get the mental health care that they need. Police officers risk serious injury every day. And members of the communities working with them, they see the worst of the worst. And that's why the mental health and stress of the job takes its toll amongst even the strongest of our men and women in law enforcement. I also know that small local police departments are the backbone of public safety for our rural, suburban, and our tribal communities across the country. And they often face the greatest hurdles to accessing resources. There are federal grant programs available for law enforcement agencies, many of which I've personally fought to support, but they often require long and confusing applications to secure. Let's face it, the thousands of police departments in small towns across the country that have fewer than 10 full-time officers simply do not have the capacity to keep their communities safe and spend hours filling out burdensome grant paperwork. So, along with my colleague during National Police Week, Senator Grassley from Iowa and I have been working on legislation to support our law enforcement officers. It's called the Invest to Protect Act. And this bipartisan legislation would provide $250 million in funding through the Community-Oriented Policing Services, or the COPS grant program, that specifically is out there to help law enforcement. This particular program would identify those law enforcement agencies with under 175 officers. This funding could be used to support critical training, mental health and recruitment and retention measures. This training and grant funding would be essential in our rural, our tribal, and our suburban communities. That is why this legislation is so important and why it's bipartisan. This should never be a partisan issue. This particular piece of legislation that Chuck Grassley and I introduced, Senator Grassley, passed 5 years ago, unanimous consent. Same piece of legislation. And I am hopeful, working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, that we will pass this again, the sooner the better, so that we can move this out of the Congress, get it to the President's desk for signature, and show our support for all law enforcement across this nation, particularly at a time during National Police Week when we are here to remember the ultimate sacrifice so many law enforcement officers have made across this country to keep our communities safe. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.